Hi, I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Again, this is Jonathan Small, host and producer of All About You, and All About You is broadcast here live every single week at AccessTV.org studios in downtown Hartford. And All About You is a show that's designed to give my guests a chance to give their life story. This morning on All About You, I have an individual who has done a tremendous amount of honorable service to his country, and he's also been involved in the political world, and he also has some big aspirations, even beyond just things here on a statewide level. My guest this morning is the state representative of the 2nd General Assembly District located here in Connecticut, and he's also the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate position here in Connecticut, no other than Dan Carter. Good morning, Dan. How you doing?
Jonathan, thanks. Thanks for having me on board.
Okay, it's good to have you down here, Dan. Dan, I believe you were born and raised in Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio, actually a suburb of Dayton, a place called Vandalia.
Oh, okay.
Vandalia is literally the crossroads of America. That's our claim to fame out there. It's where the Dixie Highway from Florida north and the National Trail cross, literally right in my small town.
Right.
So that's where I grew up.
Okay, so obviously, was it like a nice atmosphere growing up as a child?
My growing up was pretty normal, middle class. My dad was a police officer. My mom was a nurse. We went when my dad actually eventually lost his job to some medical stuff, and then couldn't get a job. Back in those days, it was, at the end of the Carter administration, and the economy wasn't so great. So we went through some tough times growing up. But, by and large, it was really a fun place to be. I think just before the show, I mentioned that one complaint was there was no ethnicity. And what I meant by that was, like, you come up here to the Northeast and you can get Turkish food. Right. you can go, something to get, Mexican food. Like, we had none of that where I was. It was just like middle America. And it was a good place to be, though. Very strong family values. I was very involved in scouting growing up, very involved in service. Used to go to Cincinnati a lot. We talked about sports.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
So you're more closer to Cincinnati than you are Cleveland in geographical distance.
Much. And my dad would kill me if I told him I was a Browns fan.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I grew up a Cincinnati Reds fan and a Bengals fan. So we still have that, in some of my family, they're Browns fans and some are Bengals fans.
Right.
So we get to go back and forth a little bit. But and it was very convenient when I moved to the Northeast, obviously, because if anybody asks, especially being in politics, what's your team?
Right.
Cincinnati Reds.
Cincinnati Reds. Okay. You have any memories of going to any baseball? Or
I do. I remember my dad took me down a number of times to the Reds games.
The Reds games.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't even know if I ever made it to a Bengals game. We watched it on TV, but the Reds games we used to go to. So I saw Pete Rose play. I remember those days. We were talking about Perez and those guys because I was a young kid. I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And nowadays I wouldn't even think of it because you can't afford to go to games. I've been to a handful, but it was a great place to grow up. Very strong family values with my family. And I went to a state school in Ohio after high school. I went to Bowling Green State University.
Okay.
And my goal at first was to be a doctor. I was really gung ho. My mom was a nurse, and her boss was our family physician. So for years, I was like, that's what I wanted to do. I went and I guess, for lack of a better term, I precepted with him a couple of times as a high school student, taught me a lot. But I got to college, and very quickly I got involved in ROTC with the Air Force.
The Air Force, okay.
And I was always into service. So I was thinking I was going to do that through the medical side. But when I got involved in ROTC, the real story behind it was kind of funny. I wasn't planning on it. My mom had told me, hey, why don't you look into it and see if it's something you like? And I got involved, and I went, and I would have dropped it right away when I had to find out how to cut my hair. I had hair, I think, down to here those days. And I found out I had to cut my hair and wear a uniform and all that for the class. And I was going to bail. And she, talked me into giving it a shot. And I'm so glad I did, because it changed my whole perspective. And I ended up going into the Air Force as a pilot.
Oh, okay.
So I graduated from college. I went down to Lubbock, Texas for pilot training for a year. And then my first assignment was out in North Carolina, flying a C-130 right there in the middle of Fort Bragg. We had Pope Air Force Base.
Now, what was that like? I mean, for you to be a pilot, I mean, is it something of a challenge? I mean, you're not like a commercial pilot, but you're still a pilot. So you're up in the air flying. I mean, what's that like?
It was, well, it was a challenge getting there. I mean, I used to joke that if you had enough bananas, you could teach a monkey to fly. Right. But what was hard about what we did, we had to employ the airplane in a mission. That was the hard part. And it was the best thing for me in the world, because my college grades weren't that great. It was when I got into pilot training that I really learned, like 80 was passing. And to be competitive, I had to have basically straight A's. Right. We all did. And it really changed my way of studying. It helped me tremendously. It was very, very competitive. And then, the job itself was amazing. I always felt like I was doing something bigger than me. It was the service aspect. So, once I went down to North Carolina and I was flying the C-130, literally one of the very first deployments was to the desert for Desert Storm. Desert Storm, right. Yeah, we were going in, it was the end of Desert Storm, and I had gone there, I think, once or twice during that time period. And I was stationed at Khobar Towers, which is where I lived, in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. That was a place that got blown up after we left.
Now, what was that like, though, living in that particular part of the world, I guess world in this case? I mean,
it was really interesting, because it was so different than anything I experienced. We were there at a time where the terrorism threat wasn't tremendous. So as long as we were in uniform, of all things, we could go into town, into Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. So I got to go to the mall a few times. I got to kind of be around and experience what it was like being there. We even did a trip to Bahrain one day, which was more westernized, like a morale trip. We all took 2 buses and went over, and you could hang out. But it was a different world, because the one thing that struck me was the anti-women thing in there. It really bothered me, because our female soldiers, or I'd say pilots or whoever it was, couldn't drive. Okay. They weren't allowed to drive. Right. It was just something as simple as that. That it was just very awkward. But it was a great experience being there. I learned a ton. I enjoyed the culture. I learned a little bit about the religion and all that when I was there. And then it was time to move on back to the States and go to the next the next thing, because we were always going somewhere. Well, then, did you have any intentions on having a career in the military service, or you? I did. Okay. I kind of I would say, I'm trying to think at what point, maybe halfway through, I really started thinking, this is going to be my career. And I say halfway through, I was in for 9 years. 9 years. Okay. So it was probably at the end of that C-130 assignment, where I was there for maybe 3.5 years. I had just finished Operation Provide Promise, which was the largest airlift in history, where we were taking food and things like that to the people in Bosnia. NATO and the United Nations would put people together in safe zones, refugees, and try to protect them. And we would come in at nighttime and drop food. And the daytime mission was Sarajevo. I don't know if people remember, but Sarajevo was surrounded in those days. It was a siege. And the Americans and Italians and United Nations, everybody, we were flying stuff in and out of Sarajevo for quite a period of time. It ended up being the largest airlift ever, bigger than the Berlin airlift. Right. Okay. Yeah. So around that time is where I decided, it's like, I really want to do this. I want to stay longer. I was getting married at that time. So I took a job teaching pilot training. And it was a good step. In my career path, you want to go do a pilot training assignment back to the schoolhouse. So I did that. I taught student pilots for, it was about almost 5 years. I was down in Mississippi. Oh, okay. And now that was an experience. Well, that would have to be an experience, from Ohio to Desert Storm, now to Mississippi. Yeah. It was really a great experience. I loved the job. I loved the teaching. And then eventually I moved into a job where I was running part of a wing. So in the Air Force, it was one of the best jobs I had. It was great. Mississippi was very backward. Yes. It gave me. Now hold on, is that in a negative way, or in a negative way? It was backward. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I love the people. Don't get me wrong. The biggest thing to do on Friday night for my wife and I was go to Walmart. It wasn't like there was a lot there. Right. But the racial issues were still alive and well in Mississippi, and that was kind of in my face a little bit, because I never grew up having any problems or issues. It wasn't in my face. So I'll give you an experience. One time I'm in a barber shop, literally in a barber shop, and the guy's cutting my hair, and an African-American gentleman walks in, And this guy, how do I explain him? He's, I don't know, 68 years old, the barber, 68 years old, you know, balding, gray hair. You know, he's raised, born and bred in Mississippi. And he looks at the guy and he says, I don't know how to cut your hair. You need to go down the road.
The road, yeah.
And I sat there and I was dumbfounded because it was one of the first experiences directly. And we would have like an African-American young lieutenant went to Walmart and got, you know, in uniform. Someone's yelling at him, and, you know, it was really quite experience. And this was the late 90s. I wouldn't have expected that. So, yeah, it was a strange world down there. And having small kids, I didn't want my kids to be educated down there.
Right.
And then I was coming to this kind of crossroads where, well, what do I really want for my kids' life? Do I want to be on the road? You know, I was a C-130 pilot by trade. Even though I was there for a while, I was going to go back to the C-130. And that meant shorter assignments, you know, a lot of travel. My career was going fantastic.
Right.
I was what they call a definitely promote 2 years early for major. So it was a good recommendation. I wouldn't have made it 2 years early, but I would have made it a year early. Like everything was coming together. But I was like, you know, these kids, I didn't want to be on the road.
Let's take a break.
Okay.
Let's come back very shortly. Let's get into your next move that you made after that, making that decision towards where you wanted to relocate to. And I'm enjoying and learning a lot about your life so far. I hope the people out there also are learning a lot about your life.
Okay. Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small. I am hosting All About You this morning with my guest. He is the Connecticut State Representative in the 2nd General Assembly District here in Connecticut. He's also the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate here, also in Connecticut, no other than Dan Carter. And we come back very shortly with part 2 of All About You. Thank you. Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small. I'm hosting All About You this morning with my guest. He is a state representative in the 2nd General Assembly District and also a Republican nominee for U.S. Senator here in Connecticut, Dan Carter. Let's continue back with our conversation. So, Dan, I guess at some point you decided that Mississippi was not the place for you and your family, and you made a move to Connecticut.
My wife was from Connecticut, from Reading, is where she grew up.
Right.
And so we decided that Connecticut was the place to be, not only for the family support, but I loved the fact that it was near New York and Boston, and, you know, Fairfield County is a great place to get jobs. So I'm thinking, okay, I've done great in the military. I'm going to come out and take the world by storm.
Right.
And so, you know, my interest had been medicine, more or less. So I ended up getting a job with Pfizer, the pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
And I ended up doing a sales job. And that's what I did when I first got out of the military. I came up here, I took a sales job with Pfizer, did that. I ended up with them for 14 years. Never expected, I didn't know what to expect, I guess, because, you know, I thought I would do a lot of different things when I came up here. But in 2002, my wife and I divorced.
Okay.
So that threw a big monkey wrench in the jobs.
Right.
But it wasn't a bad thing, because the one thing my former wife and I have always done was I would tell anybody getting a divorce, we focused on changing the relationship, not ending the marriage. And by doing that, we both had a vision of being friends and co-parents and all that. So we have an incredible relationship. We didn't use attorneys. We, you know, all these years, we've been great. Her husband, her family are still my family.
Okay.
Which is very odd to people to hear, but I spend a lot of holidays, all of us together.
Right.
I was at their wedding; they'll be at mine.
Okay.
And so it was really a great time. But for my job, I was very focused on my kids. So I wanted to make sure that I had a very stable lifestyle. I had them half-time up until maybe 4 years ago, where I almost had them full-time. Basically, I had them full-time now. And now they're 18 and 20. So it's been a whole new ball game. But along the way in the career, I was still missing that service part. And so for a while, I was involved with the volunteer fire department down in Reading. So I did that for a little while. And then I ended up on the Parks and Rec Commission for one of the small towns in Reading. And then when I was, finally divorced, I'd been divorced a couple of years, I moved to Bethel.
Right.
And in Bethel, I was really only doing my only volunteer work, more or less, was working as a reservist for the Air Force Academy. And I was still interviewing cadets and things like that, or candidates to, maybe want to go on and pursue a military career. It was a reserve job, but it was basically non-paying. There were no man days or anything like that. I was earning points for a retirement, but it all changed in 2010.
Okay.
when somebody came to me and said, I had an interest in raising money for candidates who wanted to focus on healthcare. Because that was my thing, healthcare. And I wanted to focus on that, and I wanted to raise money for candidates. And somebody said, "Hey, Dan, why don't you run for office?" And that's kind of what started it all. Never had any intention of being a politician. Never really thought of it. In fact, it would have been the opposite, because it's so negative sometimes, and people, the things they say about you and all that. And I was probably somebody who would have rather been liked than, be controversial.
Well, excuse me, Dan. At that point, you had decided that you were going to run for state representative.
State rep.
Okay,
that's what I did. And
you won.
I won.
Right.
It was a long shot race. There's a 2-term incumbent who, really good guy. We kind of keep in touch. And yeah, it was kind of a surprise that I won, because it was a long shot race. But and I've defended the seat twice, so I've been in for 3 terms of 2 years each. So I'm finishing my 6th year as a state rep.
Now, are you still working at Pfizer, or
No.
that job ended? Okay.
So what I did was I worked for Pfizer a couple years into the first term, and looking at what Pfizer wanted and what I wanted wasn't going to work. So I ended up going with a small entrepreneurial company for a while. And actually, I took almost 8 months off.
Okay.
When I went into my second campaign, I won that November, and I had just taken over. I shouldn't say taken over, but I had just added Newtown in redistricting to my district. And as you remember, in December of was that 13?
No, I think it's 2012.
12.
Right.
Yeah, because 13 was the year we started. So in January of 13, I was their representative. So I literally took that first 6-8 months off of the year, and all I focused on was Newtown. That was it. It was really crazy time.
Dan, what was your direct role in dealing with the aftermath of Newtown? I mean, did you have to do anything differently than you was doing in the past?
I was, so what had happened with Newtown was at first I'm trying to think, it was the governor came out and said he was going to put together a working group, to look into it and all that. And then the legislature decided they were going to put together a working group. Right. So I kind of pushed hard to make sure that the 3 Newtown representatives were somehow involved. We have 3 state reps, and as it would be, there were 3 parts of the working group. So one was put on the security part, one was put on mental health, and I was the person put on the gun violence working group.
Okay.
With my dad being a police officer and all that sort of stuff, I kind of had some background there. I kind of understood what was going on. So I did that for about 6 months. I went to all the hearings, everything you can imagine. Spoke with families. I mean, it was a difficult time. So I really couldn't go back to work.
Right.
That's really what happened. I couldn't go back to work. So we went through the whole Newtown, thing. And then I ended up getting a job again with a small startup, did that for a while. And then eventually I went back to my roots. I was a director of training for an aircraft charter operation. And I did that for about 1.5 years. Okay. Which brings me till about a month ago.
Right.
So yeah.
But you're still a state representative.
Still a state representative. See, what people don't realize is, as a state representative, technically speaking, it's a part-time job.
Right.
Now, it can be full-time hours at different times of the year. It can be brutal.
Right.
And you get paid $28,000 a year to do it.
Right.
And so you don't get paid a lot, and you have to have a day job to keep it working.
Right.
That's why you have a lot of attorneys, or you have people who maybe the other partner is the breadwinner. It's kind of difficult to get regular working people into the legislature because it's difficult to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, you're a Republican. But
obviously,
do you get? Well, I mean, I guess
it's
people know your title as you're a Republican, and sometimes Connecticut is labeled the blue state. That the Democrats really is the one in the legislature that run the state. Do you get along with the other party?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Yes and no.
Okay.
I don't want to give him too much credit.
Okay.
If you know what I mean. Listen, I've prided myself on being somebody who works with both sides. I really do. I have an excellent relationship with the people in general law. I'm the lead Republican. They call me the ranking on general law.
Yes.
Because obviously they have all the chairmanships because they have the control. And when it comes to getting things done for our state, I'm on board.
Right.
And by the way, 95% of what we do there, we get along and we do together.
Right.
So it's really good stuff.
Okay.
And there are folks up there I love. Now, when it comes to some of the budget issues and the stuff that I think is really determining, the solvency of our state, I vastly disagree. And I'm out there every day, trying to hammer them and pick on them, but never personal, except for Dan Malloy sometimes. I can get a little, but it's an interesting place because bipartisanship is important. It's important to work together to get things done. And by the way, that's the number one thing I think people want is they want us working together. It's hard because the stuff that's the most controversial and you read in the paper and the news is the stuff like the budget, where we're spending our money, how we're spending it. That becomes the political crap.
Right. Okay.
where they're saying, well, Dan Carter, you hate children and I don't know, whatever, hey, old people, whatever. It becomes that's the political bitterness that starts coming out. When at the end of the day, we all really want the same thing. We really do. Like my biggest concern right now are the most vulnerable populations in our state. I'm scared to death about them right now because when the economy tanks the way it has in this state and our recovery has been so slow, those are the people who are going to feel the pinch the most.
Well, then the district that you represent, you really are not in a low income area because you're located in Fairfield County.
Well, I'm on the northern end of Fairfield County.
Okay.
So I have my district is very interesting because I have Reading, which obviously is not considered a low income area. I have Bethel. Bethel's very blue collar town. It's a very good mixture. And I have Danbury.
Right.
Yeah, I have a big section of Danbury, which is parts of it are a much different demographic than I would say Bethel or Reading. And I have a very small part of Newtown. The very small part I have is very affluent. So it's very interesting because I have both sides of the spectrum, you could say, with respect to income. But the solutions are really kind of the same. They really are. I mean, if you want to get people's wages higher, then we have to have an economy that will support that. We have to. And I really believe in trying to do everything we can to give people the tools to make a lot of money and support their family and not have to pay their Visa card with their MasterCard. And I've been there too. Like I know what it's like to be unemployed. I know what it's like to raise kids on a shoestring budget. I had a small apartment and I know what that's like and it stinks. Right. Especially in Connecticut where we should have more resources. And that's why I worry, I think, and both sides of the spectrum are hurting right now. The people who are wealthy and have a lot of money are acting out of principle and they're voting with their feet. They're leaving. And then the people who are stuck here who can't leave, they have family ties, maybe they have business, not to mention you just can't afford to pick up and leave. Right. It's difficult to like pack up all your stuff and try to go to another place when you don't have any inclination if you'll get a job there. Right. So they're stuck.
Well, with all that being said, then this obviously leads up into, I would assume, one of your main reasons for looking to run or actually running for U.S. Senator here in Connecticut against Richard Blumenthal. Right. Now we're going to come back with part 3 and get into your reasons and how you feel this is going to shape your life any differently and to center everything around this big decision that you made to run for U.S. Senate here in Connecticut.
It's a big decision.
Okay. All right, this is Jonathan Small. I am hosting an edition of All About You this morning with my guest. He is the state representative in the second General Assembly district here in Connecticut, and he's also a Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate position here in Connecticut, Dan Carter. We're going to come right back with our last segment of All About You. Thank you.
My name is Nyesha McCauley, and I do business as Light Source Productions. I provide professional services in the area of strategic video communications. First, what we do is we help you craft your message using what I call the rule of the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. We do event documentation, content acquisition, full-scale productions, editing, and of course, distribution through our social media television network. And with social media, video is more important now than it has ever been. Whether you're talking big business, small business, nonprofit, church, or just an individual. Let's say you plan you're planning an event, a wedding, whatever the case may be. But let's say a big event, but no video. And you spent all this time, all these hours to put this event on, and maybe 100, 200 people attend the event. But more important than that is that thousands could attend by watching it on social media. But of course, you don't think about this until after the event is over. You can't afford not to capture it for social media. And despite what people think, I am affordable. Give me a call. Let's plan your next video project and share it with the world on my social media television network. I promise you that you will have the attention of one person, me.
Now, some insurance companies brag that they could be on the scene of the accident right after it happens. Whose interest do they have in mind? Yours? I don't think so. You may be one paycheck between you and the street. You have 3 children, work in another town. You need that car and you need it fast. If you have an accident, call me. Attorney Jeffrey Dressler, 24/7, 1122.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small hosting All About You this morning with my guest, State Representative and a Republican U.S. candidate or Republican candidate for U.S. Senator position here in Connecticut, Dan Carter. Let's continue back with our show. Obviously, Dan, anytime you make a decision and to run for elected office, it's a big decision. It can shape and affect many different areas of your life. But you're even stepping up beyond just now as a state representative to a U.S. senator position. What do you feel you have to offer that would make you the best candidate to become U.S. senator here in Connecticut?
It's the first time somebody's asked me that question that way, and I really appreciate it because you get into this and there's a lot of reasons why you run, and you think of the opportunity and what you can do, and I can make things better, blah blah blah. But one of the things I've learned is that, as Republicans, we often put candidates forth who I would say represent kind of the American dream. They're people who are like rags to riches stories. They're wealthy business people, but maybe they started out as nothing. And everybody thinks that's the thing that's going to win these races. But I think what happens is voters want somebody who's a little more like them. And I think I'm a little more like them. I think I'm a little more like voters in Connecticut than I am the wealthy businessman. And I believe the fact is, I have a very middle class upbringing. I got myself through school with my parents' help in the beginning, but I went on and by the way, I worked, but I didn't come out with a ton of student loans. So I understand the student loan issue and I'm willing to work on that. But I got a master's degree. I worked really hard. I was going towards my doctorate. I stopped to do the politics. Never have I made a ton of money. I think I've been successful. I got great kids. I understand the plight that the people go through in this state. I know what it's like to have to spend money to try to find a better job. I know how difficult it is to make it in this state because there were times I didn't make very much money and I had to support 2 households on it. So I think my perspective is very helpful. The other part of it is, I've gained a lot of experience as a state rep. Like I understand what it's like to work with constituents, people who have issues. I understand through the consumer protection stuff that we do with respect to general law. I get all that, and I enjoy working on it. I'm a little bit of a policy wonk when I'm doing it. I'm really dedicated to reaching out and helping people with their issues in this state. And constituent service is important at any level of politics. The next part of it I think is really important is because of my experience and my perspective, I really do believe I'll take on the most serious issues. And that's always been my criticism of our incumbent senator right now, Senator Blumenthal. Shows up at everything, will sign on every bill, but he doesn't always pull it through. He does a lot of stuff that, he seems like a really good guy to everybody, but he doesn't follow through in a lot of it. And some of the stuff that he's done with respect to, lawsuits against a lot of the companies have actually cost people jobs, and they've cost the state money. He comes out looking like a hero, but in the end of the day, some of these things have been very detrimental, including GE. Things like GE leaving the state. At the end of the day, that costs a ton of people jobs. And I'm not talking about the jobs of just the GE people. I'm talking about the dry cleaners. I'm talking about the gas station. I'm talking about the convenience store, deli, waiters, waitresses, like that mess that happens when all these high paying jobs leave the state. And, I look at that and I think, well, as a senator, shouldn't I be more focused on helping our economy, even in the state? As a senator, shouldn't I be thinking about the security of our state? Should I be thinking about, the stuff that's going on, that we could find ourselves embroiled in another conflict? I think he's made some really bad decisions with respect to Iran. The last thing I want is my son or your son, taking off and going to another war.
Right.
My son just turned 18, and I literally got the mail and had the selective service envelope, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I chose to make the profession of arms something I did for a period of time and defend my country. And at the time when it's your kid, you're like, wow, like I hope he never has to do that, like that way. Like, it never comes to that.
Dan, let me ask you a question. You're going up against a very high, powerful, profile, rich individual. And I'm not saying just because he has money and prestige that's always the case that's going to guarantee you to win an election. But he won very easily the last time. Now you're doing very successful now. You're becoming a Republican nominee, but I don't know if people know you as well as they know Richard Blumenthal. Do you kind of feel sometime when people make decisions to vote, it's not always looking at the substance of the person, but more of the image of the person, the running a financially strong campaign? I mean, does that bother you a little bit, or you can stay focused on?
Well, I think you got to talk about substance. Does running a financially strong campaign make you of substance? He was an attorney. He made a ton of money on tobacco settlement. Then he married the family who owned the Empire State Building. Right. I mean, the guy's like the 7th richest guy there. Okay. So let me ask you this: what should people be voting on? Do you want somebody who knows what a gallon of milk costs? Right. Do you want somebody who goes to Walmart and goes, yeah, I like the Great Value brand once in a while because I can get a good deal on it, and I'm not like, does he go to the Walmart, or does he go to anywhere and have to shop for his groceries? I guess what I'm saying is people will vote on name ID, or they'll look at somebody, do they know him? And that is important. And yes, they have to get to know who Dan Carter is, because Dan Carter is an unknown to them. But hopefully over some time that will come out. And then the other part of this is the fact that, listen, Bernie Sanders and Trump both have a very similar message to their following. It's about a message of the economy. It's about a message of hope. It's about people getting back to work, about people having opportunity in this country. Dick Blumenthal hasn't done anything significant to make that happen. He's around. He's got great name ID, like probably even as good as Kim Kardashian. But do we want Kim Kardashian as our senator right now? I know some people would vote for her, but I think the point is, do we really want somebody who's going to take on serious issues and still take on things that might be important to a certain group? Like, when they cut the head off the reporter, the next day Blumenthal was talking about caffeine powder. Right. And I'm thinking to myself, really? Like, there's a disconnect there, because he's more focused on being here and staying in office and staying elected than taking on some of the big controversial issues. And the Iran one was a big one for me. He said for months that he would not support it. He turned around and he supported it. So far, you got John Kerry out there saying they gave Iran $3 billion so far. You realize it took $500,000 to take down the World Trade Center? And we're giving it to somebody who wants to take us off the map. All right. I just don't, it doesn't compute with me. So those are the things that I hope I can get out there so people understand they need a real senator. And obviously, Dan, you still have a lot of commitments to run as a state representative, and or if you're able to become elected as the U.S. senator. So you're going to keep your current job into the election? Yeah. So what happens is, as a state representative, my role, I mean, now that sessions are ending, actually today will be the last session, hopefully. Right. Because we're going back to look at a couple of different bonding bills and things like that. But normally we're done with session a month ago. And what I have now is just really my constituent service role. I'm not running for re-election as a state representative anymore.
Okay.
I had to give that opportunity to somebody else. You can't run for both.
Okay.
Plus, it wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be fair.
Right.
So I found somebody who's great in my area, who's always been interested in it, who approached me about it a while back. And I'm like, wow, this is all kind of lining up. And, and I came into this a little bit late because we had somebody in the race who was not going to represent the Republican Party very well. There's going to be a lot of drama. We knew it was going to be a lot of controversy. And, Republican Party, they're actually a bunch of really good people who want the same things as the Democrats in this state.
Right.
What we disagree on sometimes is how to get there. The politics become so thick, though, that, all it is bad, bad name. If you've got anybody who has anything controversial, they're going to get taken out.
Then you mentioned that you came from very modest upbringings, but you've worked very hard to accomplish a lot of goals and a lot of success that you have. And obviously you would like for the people in Connecticut to also be given that fair opportunity. So do you think somewhat of your life can be somewhat of not just even an inspiration, but like a path that if you do this, you do that, the chances are you will be able to have something to show for it? You think people can kind of look at your life and say, maybe if the way Dan did it, not the exact same way, but something.
It's hard to say. I've never been that good at self-promotion, believe it or not. And of course I get in politics of all things.
Okay.
I mean, I certainly don't look at myself as a rags to riches story. Like everybody loves to hear that. I mean, we grew up okay. Both my mom and dad worked. My dad was out for a period of time. And so I know what that's like.
Right.
But it was a pretty modest upbringing. And yes, I had to work hard. My first job at 14 years old, cleaning toilets at a lumber company that my dad actually worked at. And they gave me a job. And pretty soon I was loading trucks. And next thing you know, I was a sales guy. And, I kind of worked my way up. And I was actually doing my dad's job at a period of time. This is when he left the sheriff's department down there. And, so I've worked really hard to get where I am. So I don't know if I think what's important is I know how to get there. Right. It's like, the old adage about a friend, you find yourself in a hole. And along comes a pastor and he writes a prayer and he sends it down. And then along comes, a magician and sends down, a magic hat and you can't get out. And pretty soon a friend comes along, a friend jumps in the hole with you. And you look at the friend and go, what were you thinking? Right. He says, yeah, I've been here before. I know my way out. And that's what I can be, I think, to people. It's like, I know the how to get there. And I think that's important because when I talk to people, people understand that I'm working in their best interest. I can cut through a lot of the political minutia when I can get my message out. Right. And that's the key of the campaign. Can I do that?
Well, also as a U.S. Senator, it's supposed to be an equal structure for every resident in the state of Connecticut. Unlike where you are a state representative, you represent maybe one particular area of the state, and other state representatives represent other parts of the area. But if we decide, or whoever decides as a Connecticut resident to vote for U.S. Senator, you represent the entire state. You go down to Washington, D.C. to lobby for the state residents of Connecticut. So you have the whole state looking at you now on the spotlight that you got to get. And you just mentioned, how to get there or get things done.
Well, and one of the things that I think people can expect of me as a senator, it's interesting. Sometimes, so as a United States Senator, I'm going to have, I don't want to say competing goals, but there are going to be times I'm going to be very focused on Connecticut and what Connecticut needs. Right. Because that's who I represent. Right. I'll also be focused on the United States. So a good example, on a smaller scale as a representative, I represent Bethel, Danbury, Reading, Newtown, Connecticut. Vastly different demographics in each. Right. But I had a conversation with a gentleman this morning who was very, very set on putting tolls in. Now, there are people across the state who think tolls will be a great thing, but it's probably only going to be about $50 million a year to the whole state out of a $20 billion budget, right? It would crush Danbury if we had tolls. Right. And I tried to explain to him, listen, I represent this area. I could never support that because if we put tolls on our border, it's going to hurt our mall. It's going to hurt all these small businesses that rely on New York. So I have to make sure I protect that. And I communicate that to everybody else in the state. As a senator, I'm going to be doing the same thing. Right. I'm going to be talking about jobs here in Connecticut. I'm going to be talking about, electric boat, Pratt & Whitney, manufacturing, small business, why Connecticut is important, why Connecticut is different, because we are a big generator of taxes for the United States. We really are. We are, yes. If you think about that, we're really important. And where our location is very important. And I think we need somebody who's going to step out there and talk about like how important the state is and do what it can to protect it, and also protect the nation as a whole. So being a state representative, I understand that.
Right.
So, you know, and I'm going to always work with people who have the best interest of our state and our country. You know, I'm not going to be too partisan. I'm going to, you know, I've always done that. In fact, Connecticut mirror rates me as the number 4 most independent voter in the state legislature.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think I just heard that about a month ago.
Well, that's a very high honor.
Glad.
And I give you a lot of credit for that. We're actually out of time, believe it or not. But if there's anything else about your life that you want people to know that they may not be aware of, that you might feel is important, the spotlight is yours.
Well, I think we covered a lot more than I thought we would.
Okay, that's good to know.
All the things, you know, what happens, unfortunately, in the campaign, you gloss over a lot of stuff because you got to put everything in a short time frame, and it's very difficult for people to get to know who you are.
Right.
You know, I've always considered myself a pretty regular guy.
Okay.
You know, I'm not wealthy. I drive a Jeep.
Right. Okay.
You know, I'm much more comfortable in jeans and a sports coat or something like than a suit.
Yes.
But I also understand that, you know, there are times to be senatorial. I was an Air Force officer, and I'm proud of that. I understand what it takes to get things done in this state and in this country. And I think that experience level that I have, you know, through each part of it, my upbringing is unlike a lot of the people who go into politics these days. I think I'm better in touch. I'm much better in touch because, like you said, I mean, do you want somebody who's uber wealthy, you know, representing you and your interests, or would you rather have somebody who kind of knows and walked in your shoes a little bit? So I hope people do that.
Well, it's going to be up to the voters to make that decision in November, but it was a pleasure to have you on this morning and to be able to meet you. And I wish you the best of luck this up and coming November in your race for U.S. Senate.
Appreciate you.
No problem.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Okay, this is Jonathan Small. I had just enjoyed hosting an edition of All About You this morning with my guest. He is the state representative in the 2nd General Assembly District located here in Connecticut. He's also candidate running for U.S. Senate in this up and coming November's election. And he had a tremendous life story. We got a lot towards his views on running for U.S. Senate towards the end, but I think people still was able to find out something about my guest beyond just him as a state representative, and I had enjoyed having him on this morning. There's always a lot of interesting issues and topics that's always ongoing. So accesstv.org network is always trying to stay on top of every particular issue. And if I don't see you before Monday, the people out there have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you. Okay, that's a wrap.